my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment, which is known as New Mexico. And today's date is Friday, October 7th, 2016. Yeah, it's early Friday morning here. A little chilly outside, but that's all right. And I've been, keeping tabs on Hurricane Matthew. It looks like South Florida, Dade Broward, and Palm Beach have been in the clear, but there are people from Stewart and up need to really pay attention. Hopefully they're hunkered down, ready to go, and keep your thoughts to them as well. And I'm going to even talk about what happened in Haiti. It looks like a few hundred people have been found dead, and the conditions there have been deplorable long before Matthew went through that part of the island. It's a real shame. So, I just went to the balloon fiesta of Albuquerque today, or earlier today, my folks. And it was real nice. I can't complain. A lot of hot air balloons. I took photos of it. It's on Facebook. And, of course, an Instagram video. You can check that out, too. It's on my Facebook page if you want to see it. And speaking, of sometimes the debacle and the fear factor, they're talking about the hurricane's going to destroy a lot of people and so forth. That's what you talk about, Matthew. I see some exploitation, and that's not good. Of course, people talk about the panic mode, and it's very unhealthy because a lot of them haven't really been in a major hurricane. So one thing for sure, if you live in the state of Florida or along that coastline in the Gulf Coast, you have to expect these particular part of Mother Nature. So, regardless it's HARP or not, you have to expect these things and learn to prep up, know these drills, and always work as a team. I've been saying that to people for a long time. And it's going to be talking a good amount of stuff here, and I'm real concerned what's going on with the U.S.-Russian relationship. Looks like it's going sour, and mainly over Syria, which is completely irrelevant. But it looks like they're maybe fulfilling Albert Pike's prophecy, I would say, from Morals and Dogma. So instead of that, I'm going to be first thing I'm going to be going to talk about, and it will be the storm of the decade. Is by Mike Snyder from The Most Important News, and there's some good merit on here, even though I'm not a big fan of Jim Baker show, but always appreciate his input in a lot of areas. So it's called common interest. That's one thing I tell folks. And there's here the storm of the decade, 23 facts about Hurricane Matthew as it prepares to slam into the East Coast, which is happening right now. If you go to YouTube, there's a WPV PTV in West Palm Beach, and it's happening. It looks like there's some damage happening around Fort Pierce area as well. And so I'm going to continue on. One moment. And as it reads here, the worst storm to hit the United States since Hurricane Katrina is expected to slam into the East Coast on Friday. The governors of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina are strongly urging millions of people living in evacuation zones to leave, but a lot of residents are choosing not to take this storm very seriously. After about a decade of very low hurricane activity, a lot of people have forgotten how immensely destructive storms like this can be. Inevitably, there will be damage to homes and businesses that could have been prevented by proper preparation, and there will be some very foolish people that will die because they choose to stay behind instead of evacuating. Just like with so many other things, normalcy bias has lured millions of Americans living in the Southeast into a false sense of security, and many of them will discover the foolishness of not taking storms like this seriously the hard way. The following 23 key facts about Hurricane Matthew is as to prepare to slam into the east coast of the United States. 1. Hurricane Matthew is projected to be a Category 4 storm when it hits the Florida coastline. 2. According to the latest report, Matthew has sustained the wind of 140 miles an hour with gusts up to 165 miles an hour. 3. On Friday, early Friday morning, storm surge is expected to peak about 9 feet. 4. The National Weather Service is warning of an immense human suffering. 5. Florida Governor Rick Scott has strongly warned everyone living in the evacuation zones leave immediately. In fact, he is openly telling the public that this storm will kill you. 6. It's even projected that this may be the biggest evacuation in the history of the state of Florida. 7. In some areas, bumper-to-bumper traffic is being reported on both sides of Interstate 95. 8. According to NBC News, there have been traffic jams since Tuesday as frightening residents try to flee the evacuation zones. 9. The death toll from Hurricane Matthew in the Caribbean already in the triple digits. And that's Haiti, so I'll be talking about that too. 10. Approximately 2 million people live in evacuation zones in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. 11. The city of Jacksonville, Florida sits right in the middle of the hurricane warning zone, and that's the most populated city in the state of Florida. The most populated city. I'm not saying the county, but the city itself, very populated. All right. 12. The projected path of the storm will take it right up to the coastline until it hits southern North Carolina. And there's a footage on that. There's a photo of that too, so you can check it out. 13. So far, about 2,800 flights have been canceled due to the storm. 14. Amtrak has also canceled all train service into the affected area. 15. Even Disney World has shut down due to the danger posed by Hurricane Matthew. 16. There are extremely long lines at gas stations throughout the southeast, and there have already been some reports of stations running out of gasoline entirely. 17. Many retailers throughout the southeast are totally sold out of bottled water at this point. 18. It is being projected that 7 million people could be left without power by the storm. 19. A hurricane that is immensely powerful can uproot trees, pick up large objects, and hurl them like missiles, and even rip roofs entirely off of homes. 20. Despite all the warnings, many people have decided to stay put and ride out the storm. 21. Thousands of National Guard troops have already been deployed to help with evacuations. 22. I think it is also interesting to note that less than 24 hours ago, the Obama administration strongly condemned the new Jewish settlement activity in the West Bank. For those not familiar with the major connection between major disasters in the United States and U.S. mainly in the Middle East, there's a video on that. Please see the video. I've seen the video, and it's interesting how things are coexisting. So, and even though it's a Jim Baker show, but like I said, I'm not going on his creed, but rather the information. So you have to look at that. And I'm not being anti-Christian by any means, but he has some good stuff there. He's got to look at things a lot broader. 23. These are the things that the Red Cross is urging people to do. Get a NOAA weather radio, stock up on batteries to run radios and flashlights, keep your vehicle's tank to close as full as possible, create an evacuation plan and practice it regularly. Always keep at least 3-day supply of water and non-perishable foods on hand, along with at least a week's worth of your prescription medicines. Make copies of your vital personal documents like medication lists, medical records, passports, insurance papers. Keep them with you. Usually I add on here, if you don't have firearms, get them. Okay, but before the hurricane, all that, don't get me wrong, that usually I get some extra ammunition, because you never know why. After the hurricane, you're gonna have some riffraff want to loot people's homes and businesses, and what happened was the police may not be around, the National Guard may not be around, so you have to be the first line of defense when it comes to your property, because it can affect your livelihood, and it may be want to do raping and pillaging to violate your family space. That's common law in Florida, okay? So I'm just giving you guys a heads up on that. Wikipedia defines normalcy bias this way. Normalcy bias or normality bias is a mental state people entering when facing disaster. It causes people to underestimate both the possibility of a disaster and its possible effects. This may result in situations where people fail to adequately prepare, and on a larger scale, the failure of governments to include the populace in its disaster preparations. The assumption that is made on the case of normalcy bias is that since a disaster never has occurred, it will never occur. It can result in the inability of people to cope with the disaster once it occurs. People with normalcy bias have difficulties reacting to something they have not experienced before. People also tend to interpret warnings in the most optimistic way possible, seizing on any ambiguities to infer a less serious situation. Sadly, this perfect describes how many in the Southeast are responding to Hurricane Matthew. Because a highly destructive hurricane has not struck in the region in many years, a lot of people are greatly underestimating what this storm could mean for them and their families. Hopefully this article will persuade at least a few people to evacuate. You don't want to be in the middle of the storm when it hits. It already killed lots of people, and there are very few homes out there that are designed to withstand 140-mile-an-hour winds. And because you aren't in evacuation zone does not mean that the storm will not impact you and your family in a major way. The course of the storm has been highly unusual, and it could still take some very unexpected twists and turns. So if you lie anywhere in the Southeast, you need to be ready for anything. Just remember what we witnessed during Hurricane Katrina. This is the worst storm to hit the U.S. since that time, and let us pray that it does not turn out to be as destructive as many experts are now projecting. And he's right in that area. I see something, like I said, something like that. You have to be vigilant in these areas because it can bite you in the butt. That's why work as a team, um, correspond with your neighbors, make sure that they make sure they're ready to go. If you have to give them a hand, especially elderly, do it. And even the aftermath, people don't realize after a hurricane, the aftermath or after the hurricane, more people get injured. Try to do things unusual. When they try to use a chainsaw and so forth, they get injured because they're holding it improperly or in the wrong, doing the wrong position. They have to be always going to be safety first, and create your own like little watch group too. Okay, look out for one another especially after these times. But like I said, because looters, riffraff, prowlers, they like to take things for granted. And that's a fact, because I've been through 4 hurricanes. Okay, when I lived in South Florida. Andrew was the very first one. First time I prepared for a hurricane was in 1979, Hurricane David. It was on Labor Day, 1979. And fortunately, we didn't get hit. We did have a blackout. We did have power outage. So I'm not surprised people were freaking out about the power outage before the storm hits. It never hit. It happens. And it went to Deerfield and Palm Beach County. So it was just minor damage, but that's just how it goes. So at least I learned these things. When Andrew hit, a lot of people freaked out. They panicked, and plus ATM machines are out because during that time they didn't have the right technology and so forth. But the high pressure brought it in, went right straight through, and just look up Hurricane Andrew, you understand. You can understand. But something like hurricanes, you gotta be vigilant. I'll say, work as a team. I correspond with some people that haven't really been a hurricane. One of them, I asked them one question: "Have you filled up your bathtub?" "Oh, why?" I go, "Why? Because of water." I go, "You never know. Don't guess. Be ready." So hopefully he done it, and even though the hurricane didn't go through, it's still a good drill. Practice, practice, practice. Like any other, get ready for a possible natural disaster. At least hurricanes, you can expect it. You got the time, and be ready. Even they say hurricane season starts from June 1st, the 1st of June to November 30th. So you always want to be ready for anything. There's plenty of sites to go to, plenty of places to look at. You can be creative too. You'd be surprised what you thought you could never done can be achieved. I've done some wild stuff too, to get things done, and it worked. So make sure, just hope and pray for these folks that it won't be as disastrous like before, than expected. Try to keep it minimal, and watch out for the exploitation. One more thing, even the people that's going through this hurricane and any other natural disaster, don't rely on the government. especially FEMA. Because if they say, oh yeah, we get you some stuff here, we can get you some supplies when you need it, and you know what's gonna happen? It can. They'll send you a bill like a year or two afterwards, bite you in the butt when least expect it. I know firsthand because people I never relied on them, but people showed it to me. All right. Well, speaking of that, here's one thing came from Yahoo News. It says here we have nothing to survive on. Desperation. That's Haiti toll hits 339. This is by McKinney Bryce and Joseph Golodelva. And from Reuters, actually, it says here the number of people killed by Hurricane Matthew in Haiti rose rapidly into hundreds on Thursday, mainly in villages making contact with the outside world days after the cyclone ripped through the impoverished nation's picturesque Western Peninsula. With the numbers rising quickly, different government agencies and committees differ on the total death toll. A Reuters tally of deaths reported by civil protection officials at a local level showed the storm killed at least 339 people. Several dozens were killed in the coastal town of Les Angeles in Saud. Department said Louis Paul Raphael, the central government's representative in the region, inland and nearby Chanto. The toll rose to 90 late in the evening, the town's mayor said. In 2010, the magnitude 7 earthquake wrecked Port-au-Prince, killing upward of 200,000 people. However, the impact of this tragedy has felt most in a remote but populated region far from the capital's support. We have nothing left to survive on. All the crops have gone, all fruit trees down. I don't have a clue how this is going to be fixed, said Mark Sanel Noel, the mayor of Chanto, the deputy mayor of Chanto. Matthew is the strongest hurricane in the Caribbean since Felix in 2007 and was closing in on Florida as a category 4 cyclone, the second strongest storm on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. 4 people were killed over the weekend in the Dominican Republic, which shares the islands of Hispaniola with Haiti. Devastation in Haiti prompted authorities to postpone a presidential election scheduled for Sunday. Many victims were killed by falling trees, flying debris, and swollen rivers. When Matthew hit on Tuesday with winds of 145 miles per hour or 230 kilometers per hour. Most fatalities were in towns and fishing villages around the western end of Tiburon Peninsula in Haiti Southwest, a region of white Caribbean beaches and rivers backed by hills. The storm passed directly through the peninsula, driving the sea inland and flattened homes on Monday and Tuesday. Fleeing in panic, Los Angeles was the first to be hit by Matthew, has since been out of contact. The mayor told Reuters just before the storm hit that people were fleeing in the house in panic as a sea surged into town. A few miles in Port-au-Prince village, Mayor Jean-Romain Pierre-Louis said 25 people were killed. Another 24 were killed in the village of Roche-Bateau further south. In Grands-Anse department, also on the storm's destructive path, but on the other side of the peninsula, 38 more lost their lives. Earlier on Thursday, a meeting of emergency workers, including representatives from the government, the United Nations, and international aid agencies, said that 283 had been killed. Workers attended in the meeting in one public hospital in La Caisse, a coffee and butter exporting port of Haiti, Tiburon Peninsula. Most doctors had not shown up to work since they took shelter as the storm hit. Food and water were scarce in the shelters. Poverty, weak government, and precarious living conditions for many of its citizens make Haiti particularly vulnerable to natural disasters. International aid has at times made things worse. The following 2010 earthquake, UN peacekeepers inadvertently introduced cholera to Haiti, killing at least 9,000 people and infecting hundreds of thousands more. Pan American Health Organization said on Thursday it was preparing for a possible cholera surge in Haiti after the hurricane because flooding was likely to contaminate water supplies. In Les Caisse, tiny airport windows were blown out and terminal grooves were mostly missing, although the landing strip was not heavily damaged. The runway is working, and in hours and days to come, we can receive humanitarian flights, said Sergei Tillis, the information officer and runaway agent for the airport. Yeah, so it's like one thing or another. A lot of issues been going over there, which is a real shame. And people critical of Haiti in general, but in the humanitarian perspective, it's very disturbing because a lot of them still, like Clinton Foundation, the Clinton report to Clinton Foundation, try to send all the money donated to them. They transferred to Haiti, and it's never been fulfilled. There's a lot of like dirty dealing in that, and a lot of folks were still living in unsafe housing conditions. You can see from the video in this site, in this page, on this page, it is still very deplorable. So you gotta hope for the best, expect donation drives, but one thing you gotta watch out for, my friends. A lot of the guys, we gotta get people gonna take advantage and use it for their own pockets. So make sure if you're gonna help give them a donation, help out. Make sure it goes directly to them. If you do a little homework, make it happen. Not saying it's easy, but everything's a risk. But the people out there are hurting, and it's just an example. It's a real shame. And on here, speaking of that, natural disaster related stuff or hurricanes and so forth, Governor Rick Scott he signed a permitless concealed carry in Florida during emergency evacuations to sign into law. And this came out. It came out. Okay, this came out recently. Yes, it's not recent, but a while back. So Governor Rick Scott signed 44 bills into law Thursday afternoon, one of which allowed Florida residents to conceal firearms without a permit during an event of emergency evacuation for 48 hours. The 48-hour period may be extended per the governor. SB 290 carried a concealed weapon or a concealed carry a concealed weapon or a concealed firearm. The bill allows concealed weapon or firearm be carried for 48 hours in a mandatory evacuation order declared during the state of emergency. The bill SB 290, which the Florida House approved by 86-26 vote back in April, was drafted as a response to Hurricane Katrina, where many gun owners faced charges after they took their firearms with them when fleeing their homes. Brandon is a founder of Concealed Nation and is a vivid firearm enthusiast with a particular interest in responsible concealed carry. His EDC is a Glock 27 that holds hardened. So Brandon is the founder of Concealed Nation as a vivid firearm. Yep, okay, never mind. That holds hardened 165-gram FTX critical defense rounds and rides comfortably. That's an advertising. Okay. But and it's really it in that area. So even though it's an old article, it's good. I'm glad it has passed. And one thing I find discouraging because one thing because we have natural law. Okay, so that's one thing I gotta look at. So everything's a step. One thing I gotta say is a step. Okay, we don't have to legislate. It should have been done immediately without legislation because we have natural law, basic rights, and our natural born rights are considered inalienable according to Florida Constitution's Article 1, Section 2, which is titled Basic Rights. Well, one thing I like is a step closer to constitutional carry, and anyone that supports it in the state of Florida, there's two. The first thing I sent was basic rights, okay, and right to privacy, Article 1, Section 23. Because how I see this, even though, okay, our basic rights, when they say that under Article 1, Section 8 of the Florida Constitution, talk about we have the right to keep the bear arms and it shall not be infringed. However, it can regulate. So right there, that's a contradicting statement, okay? It contradicts the whole of the right to bear arms. And if you want to carry a concealed handgun, you have to get a permit. All right, so you got to tell the government, hey, I want a permit, and that's to me it's unconstitutional under state constitution. Not just our basic rights, but the right to privacy. It's none of their damn business. Even though they say, oh yeah, we'll make sure the public don't know about it, but remember, and when it comes to the internet, every tech gadget has a flaw. It can be hacked. So, the right to privacy. Hey, the reason for that I say because when they try to have the abortion amendment, and even for especially for minors and so forth, it was considered may compromise the right to privacy. That's in my view why it got scrapped by the voters. So I think it should be the same thing with concealed carry. It's none of their damn business. It's your right to privacy under Article 1, Section 23 of our state constitution. Plain and simple. But I am not a big fan of Rick Scott, and I will praise him for this. So it's a good thing. But all those folks out there, start planting the seeds. Remember, one flame can light a million. So everyone down there, make it happen when it comes to constitutional carry. All right, this is I find very disturbing, and it came from the Daily Mail, and it says here World War III will be extremely lethal and fast. It's by Mark Prigg from the Daily Mail, and it came out the 5th of October. It says it's a chilling vision of war and one unlike any other ever fought. U.S. military bosses have revealed their predictions for a major conflict and say war between nation states at some point in the future is almost guaranteed. Artificial intelligence and smart weapons will be at the fore, with a modern nation states acting aggressively like the enemy. There's a video for that. You can hear it yourselves. Artificial intelligence and smart weapons will be at the fore, with a modern nation state acting aggressively. I think Army boss have revealed this, like I said to you already. A conventional conflict with the near future will be exactly lethal and fast and will not own a stopwatch, said Major General William Hicks on a future of the Army panel at the annual meeting of the Association of the U.S. Army in Washington, according to Defense One. The speed of events are likely to strain our human abilities, Hicks said. The speed at which machines can make decisions in the far future is likely to challenge our ability to cope, demanding a new relationship between man and machine. This guy Alvin's confounded mind. Remember that movie Terminator? Tensions rise with the West at Russia's complete military drill. China and Russia are both mustering conventionally massive militaries that are increasingly technological and forcing the Pentagon to contemplate and prepare for violence on the scale that the U.S. Army has not seen since Korea, said Hicks. Lieutenant General Joseph Anderson, Army Deputy Chief of Staff for Operation Planes and Training, said the U.S. faces threat from modern nation states act aggressively in militarized competition. Who does that sound like? Russia, he said. War between nation states at some point in the future is almost guaranteed, said Army Chief of Staff General Mark A. Miley at the same event. Future adversaries could end the air superiority the U.S. Air Force has provided since the Korean War, Miley said. And anti-access area denial capabilities could prevent the Navy from getting to the fight, he warned. So land forces will have to enable sea forces, and the Army is definitely going to have to dominate the air above our battle space, he said. Miley said the Army almost be prepared to engage the welfare operate without the space communications and precision navigation has taken for granted and fight in a complex urban setting. Lieutenant General Joseph Anderson, Army Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations and Plans and Training, said the faces threats from modern nation states acting aggressively in a militarized competition. Miley cited a long list of fundamental changes confronting the nation and the army, including the renewed threat from Russia, the growing economic power and military strength of China, and an expanding number of fragile nation-states, and climate changes that could lead to more instability. While we are ready now, we are being challenged, he said. If the aim is to deter war, our armies as our nation must be ready. The Army future weapons also need to be better designed. Katharina McFarland, acting Assistant Secretary, Army Secretary for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, said, "You you travel all over the world, don't you?" McFarland asked the gathered audience of soldiers, Army civilians, and industry reps. "You can pretty much get in a car anywhere and drive it. As an engineer, I think in terms of a simple interface, no matter what helicopter you can get in and operate it. Russian Prime Minister, we have fallen into the new Cold War." Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty disturbing, my friends. Yeah. So the whole thing is what they're trying to say. Try to blame everything on Russia for us falling new Cold War. But the whole thing is, when you start reading everything else, it's like, how come NATO and the United States they're playing empire? Okay, they're being it's very imperialistic, and what's happening, and that's dangerous too, because when you go in, like, especially what happened in Ukraine, which I've been saying in past episodes, is nothing more than a grand chessboard move. Because the book by Zabir Brzezinski talks about that, and it's like, it's more like, who's gonna blame who? Whoever shoots first, then they're gonna put the responsibility on. And so I'm real critical with some of the generals here. Talk about we're gonna go there and just destroy them. It's completely unacceptable. No one wants to go to war. The people from both sides. But if you're gonna be meddling with people's affairs and their allies, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be it's gonna A lot of friction is happening. So the whole thing is, stop being a damn empire, piss on NATO for all I care, and let the Syrian people decide their fate. It's just an example, my friends, of what I'm talking about. We're all trying to, you got people in these governmental bobbleheads, okay, in the United States, for an example, like the Soviet Union, meddling with other nations' affairs. You know what? Leave them alone. Don't don't entangle with them by any means. But all these knuckleheads believe they're smarter than everybody else. And you know what? I like to hear some of these clowns throw their asses in the front line. Let's see how tough they are. Well, everyone will sit and watch. That's how I see it. This is completely dangerous, and this could be fulfilling, you can say, Bible prophecies, Nostradamus, and even Albert Pike. Um, the Morals and Dogma about World War III. He wrote that like over 100 years ago, like 130, 40 years ago. Something to think about, my friends. So please pay attention. This is more important than some celebrity getting robbed allegedly, and who's created more home runs in baseball, who had the best passes in football. And I'm not gonna go sports bashing, but it became a cult, especially with the NFL. It became a religious cult, and that's one thing. Beware of these distractions, like even with I call it the 2016 evangelical circus, which is a presidential race. Pay attention, my friends, because it's more vital than the crap they're putting at the mainstream media. All right. Next one here came from the fifthcolumnnews.com. It's here, a 9/11 attorney recruiting clients to sue Saudi Arabia for attacks. It says he a partner in a law Manhattan firm that ranked in the hundreds of millions of dollars, representing 10,000 ground zero workers, is soliciting those clients to sue Saudi Arabia for sponsoring the 9/11 attacks. There is nothing you need to do at this time. We'll be preparing a lawsuit and filing on your behalf. reads an email sent to clients by Nepali Law, the new firm of Paul Nepali. The email says that if the client is not interested, he or she should send the firm letter or email saying so. A retired firefighter who got the email said he would not hire Nepali. It says here, it makes you feel somewhat violated. That's your decision, not theirs, he said, the New York Post reported on Sunday. Michael Barasich, a lawyer who filed victims' compensation claims for thousands of workers dumped by Nepal's old firm, says he has gotten dozens of calls from their former clients. They are incredibly confused, he said. Legal experts say firms cannot claim to represent clients in a lawsuit without first obtaining permission. Under the rules, there has to be a written agreement setting forth the type of representation in terms of compensation. It has to be signed by the client, said Manhattan lawyer Peter DePhillips. Congress on Wednesday overruled U.S. President Obama's veto to enact a law allowing 9/11 victims to sue the Saudis. And there's one thing you got to look out for. This report is prepared by Tanzim News. It's interesting here. You always got to expect these vultures, okay, or these particular firms want to take you guys for granted and suck you dry. That's why you let them. You got to go to them, not the other way around. So it's really shady, okay? And like saying, based on that, the 9/11 suit, I support it. Okay, I support it, but make sure you have a lot of meritable information against the accused or the defendant. So, one thing you gotta look out for, based on this information, the Nepali law are doing it poorly. It makes them like you may have those shyster attributes. So that's my intake on that. And I'm gonna take a little chill, so I'll be right back a little bit. Okay, so yeah, next thing I'm gonna be doing, reading. It came from newstarget.com. It's written by J.D. Hayes. And if I'm correct, he did stuff for Natural News as well. It says here, U.S. Attorney General admits prescription painkillers are the gateway drug, not marijuana. Interesting. Loretta Lynch herself. You gotta be careful with some of these bloodhounds, you know. All right. It says so. As it reads, for years, advocates for legalizing marijuana for recreational use have emphatically stated that there is no evidence that suggests that pot serves the gateway drug. That is, cannabis use leads to the abuse of other, more potent drugs. Proponents of the cause have been pointing out for years that there are other, more easily accessible drugs that are more harm than cannabis. Now, finally, their claims are being validated. Just recently, the Attorney General of the United States said that Big Pharma's painkillers are much more habit-forming and lead to greater abuses of drugs than pot, as reported by IFL Science during a recent speech at the University of Kentucky. Attorney General Loretta Lynch said that heroin addicts across the country were much more likely to have started out as users of prescription painkillers than marijuana. And while such links don't occur in 100% of cases, her statement does emphasize the point that just because something is legal doesn't mean it's completely harmless. For nut job, she has a point there. These opioids bind opiate receptors to the central nervous system in order to reduce pain and other feelings of discomfort. Were taken in the correct doses and in the proper regimen, they can be safe. But if opioids are abused, users build up a tolerance to their effects, needing more and more with higher doses to achieve relief. And hold on, screwed up on the microphone. Yeah, that's a lot better. Let me just try something here. Yeah, okay, so that won't be too bad. I should be a little bit closer, just like that. Of my mistake, my friend. Sorry about that. And okay, and it says here, but opioids are abused. Users build up a tolerance to their effects, needing more and more than higher doses to achieve the same relief. Then addiction becomes a near certainty. But as Lynch noted in her speech, patients and abusers who develop a problem with prescription drugs use very often to move on street drugs because they have an insatiable cravings to satisfy. When we talk about heroin addiction, we usually, as we have mentioned, are talking about individuals that start out with a prescription drug problem and then because they need more and more, they try to turn to heroin, she said. While some, mostly younger users of marijuana do not go on try to other illegal drugs that are stronger, the vast majority of evidence suggests that those cases are well in the minority and hardly in the norm. So, in so many cases, Lynch said, it isn't trafficking ring that introduces a person to opioids. It is a household medicine cabinet. That's the source. A growing body of research appears to substantiate that claim. One recent study found that 50% of women who are currently undergoing treatment for opioid addiction in Ontario, Canada, first came into contact with opioids through a prescription received from their primary care provider. As far back as 2010, Natural News reported that scientists had realized that opioids were gateway drugs to harder, more potent, and more deadly street drugs. A University of Buffalo study found that when patients were addicted to prescription opioids, they sought out more potent street visions like heroin because they were easier to get and cheaper. And there's plenty of sources to check that out. And to say it has a valid point. And I was like, hey, he's talking to a guy too who's not a big fan of Loretta Lynch, but in this one here, there it is meritable. And so, but one thing you have to look at on the other side too, there's a patent, there's a claim, there's a patent. That's the United States government handling marijuana. So you have to really be careful when you talk about pushing, make it legalized for recreational and so forth, because like I said in my past episodes on this particular subject, can it be can it be genetically modified or organic? That's one thing we have to really look at before pushing for these measures, and I say that out of respect. So, but one thing I gotta say, hey, I'm happy for this, because prescription drugs has been a real big issue, and Big Pharma doesn't like this at all. So there's a lot of big frictions happening with people in government as well. So that's one thing I like. It's a good thing. All right, next one here came from antiwar.com, and it's by Mr. Fitz, I think it's called, right? Jason Ditz, yeah, or Dietz. It says here, Turkey rejects demand to withdraw troops as Iraq warns of regional war. With Iraqi officials warning that unwelcome presence of Turkish ground troops in that territory threatens to spark a regional war and request an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council over the deployment, Turkish officials are continuing to resist the calls to leave. Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim insisted that Iraq's objection would have no impact on Turkey's deployment of troops into Iraqi territory, saying Turkey is being unfairly criticized and that Iraq has no right to speak to Turkey like it has been. And that's their own country. Remember that. You even know that there are 63 countries with existing military presence in Iraq, saying he thought that would be unreasonable to single out just Turkey and demand that they leave. Turkey's an estimate that have around 2,000 troops in Iraq. Many of them are training in Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga. Turkey first deployed troops into Iraq back in December, saying that they were there as trainers and claiming Iraqi officials approved the move. Iraqi officials, however, denied approving it and have condemned the ever-growing presence as a threat to Iraqi sovereignty. Yeah, because I know there's been friction with the Turks and the Kurdish for a very long time. And as far as I'm concerned, every country needs to leave Iraq. They have to go back into a sovereign jurisdiction. And as far as I'm concerned, the United States and the NATO allies should have never invaded Iraq in 2003. is completely unacceptable. But singling out Turkey, yeah, nothing new because like saying the Kurds and the Turks, they despise each other for a good long time, so there's nothing really new. But we got to leave them alone. Bring our troops home. Get them out of Iraq. That's the United States. And the rest of the country is going to do the same thing. And they're going to be rebuilt too, because too many people are suffering from these wars. And this whole ISIS thing, to me, is New World Order funded. So we should all get out. That's how I see it. All right, finally, this came from Land Destroyer. Another good commentary says here, the real reason the U.S. can't separate moderates from Al-Qaeda in Syria. This is by Tony Carlucci, which is from New Eastern Outlook. Says here, the U.S. has attempted to direct attention away from the fact supposed moderate rebels has been supporting are now openly aligned to designate foreign terrorist organizations including Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, and the self-proclaimed Islamic State ISIS. By focusing instead of the alleged humanitarian crisis unfolding and final operations to restore security to the northern city of Aleppo. Syria already controls the vast majority of Aleppo. The operation, however, headed by Syrian forces and supported by its allies, including Russia, aims to bring the last remaining districts of the city under government control. Already, the vast majority of Aleppo's remaining 2 million residents live in government-controlled territory, with less than 250,000 trapped in terrorist-held sections of the city. The Syrian ambassador to the UN, Barashi Jafari, during a recent interview reiterated the fact that not only do 1.75 million of Aleppo's 2 million residents live in government-controlled sections of the city, but militant groups held up in districts away in liberation are not even entirely made up of Syrians, but rather foreigners who have entered the country. This entirely undermines the West's narrative that Syria is undergoing a civil war, rather than a foreign orchestrated invasion by proxy, and that security operations to secure Aleppo's remaining districts would represent somehow an unprecedented humanitarian disaster. And as the U.S.-Russian broker ceasefire collapses, Russia has cited the United States' inability and unwillingness to clearly delineate between what Washington alleges are moderate rebels and designated terrorist organizations the U.S. itself admits are operating alongside militants they are backing. Reuters, an article entitled "Russia Urges U.S. to Deliver on Promise to Separate Syria's Moderates from Terrorists," would admit. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov urged U.S. Secretary John Kerry on Wednesday to make good on U.S. pledges to separate Washington-oriented units of Syrian opposition from terrorist groups, Russian Foreign Ministry said on Wednesday. In response, Washington has incoherently and dishonestly blamed Russia for what it calls the driving moderates into the arms of terrorist organizations. A BBC article titled "Syria Conflict, U.S. Says Russia is Driving Rebels into Extremist Camps" would claim that Russia's increasing military action in Syria is forcing moderates with a position into the hands of extremists, the U.S. has said. However, in reality, a long-standing truth entirely negates America's current rhetoric so thoroughly. This reality lays the blame for the last 5 years of regional catastrophe entirely at Washington's feet. Washington wars on Syria began in 2007, led by policymakers, not 2011 by protesters. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh is in now prophetic 2007 article titled "The Redirection in this Administration's New Policy Benefiting Our Enemies in the War on Terrorism," laid out years before Syrian conflict began, not only and how the war would be triggered and subsequently waged, but the very sort of humanitarian and sectarian catastrophe that would unfold, and how those the U.S. claimed were villains would play a pivotal role in protecting religious and ethnic minorities across the region as it burned in foreign fuel conflict. The article began by stating explicitly, emphasis added, to undermine Iran, which is predominantly Shiite, The Bush administration has decided, in effect, to reconfigure its priorities in the Middle East. In Lebanon, the administration has cooperated with Saudi Arabia's government, which is Sunni, in clandestine operations that are intended to weaken Hezbollah, the Shia organization that is backed by Iran. The U.S. has also taken part in clandestine operations aimed at Iran and its ally Syria. A byproduct of these activities has been the bolstering of Sunni extremist groups that espouse a militant vision of Islam and are hostile to America and sympathetic to Al-Qaeda. The statement is underpinned by further 9 pages of interviews with American, Lebanese, and Saudi intelligence sources, as well as revelations that monetary and political support was already being fueled at the time into Syria to lay the groundwork for the coming conflict. The U.S. can't separate moderates from terrorists because there are no moderates. The 2007 report clearly explains why the U.S. cannot separate its alleged moderate rebels from Al-Qaeda and its various affiliates, precisely because they were never any moderate rebels to begin with. In fact, it is clear now that the notion of moderate rebels was merely covered for the West's intentional support to provided to terrorists since before the conflict began. Thus, it is not Syria and Russia are suddenly driving the rebels into extremist camps. It is instead that America's attempt to cover up the fact that it is armed and supported extremists since as early as 2007 are no longer tenable. Hirsch's article would also admit emphasis added. Narcissus went on, the Saudis have considerable financial means and have deep relations with the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists, Sunni extremists who view Shiites as apostates. The last time Iran was a threat, the Saudis were able to mobilize the worst kinds of Islamic radicals. Once you get them out of the box, you can't put them back. He will continue by stating, emphasis added, this time the U.S. government consulted told me Bandar and other Saudis have assured the White House that they will keep a very close eye on the religious fundamentalists. Their message to us was, we created this movement and we can control it. It is not that we don't want the Salafists to throw bombs. It is that they throw them at Hezbollah, Qaeda, al-Sadr, Iran, and then the Syrians if they continue to work with Hezbollah in Iran. Yet, despite this realization, even back in 2007, the U.S. continued in earnest with the conspiracy transcending the Bush administration being carried forward under the U.S. President Barack Obama's administration, predicting the coming second conflict that would unfold in the region. Hirsch's articles would note. Robert Baer, a former longtime CIA agent in Lebanon, has been a severe critic of Hezbollah and has warned of its links to Iranian-sponsored terrorism. But now he told me we got Sunni Arabs preparing for clandestine conflict, and we'll need somebody to protect the Christians in Lebanon. It used to be the French and the United States who would do it, and now it's going to be Nasrallah and the Shiites. Indeed, it was stated then and evident now that Syria's government, its military, and their allies constitute the only force capable of protecting the region's many minorities from the U.S. Saudi-backed horde of sectarian extremists. Thus, even at the U.S. feigns urgent concern for what it attempts to portray as an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in Aleppo, it is self-guilty of intentionally engineering entire conflict in the first place, knowing precisely the nature and degree of barbarity they would unfold and the extent to which it would reach by attempting to shield its terrorist proxies remaining in Aleppo and throughout the rest of Syria. It is attempting to prolong and not the end of the humanitarian crisis and tip Syria further toward what would be a catastrophic collapse and making Libya's recent U.S.-induced division and destruction pale in comparison. U.S. spokespeople before their various podiums and amid their various press conferences are struggling to explain what the United States is doing in Syria and toward what end besides repeating the devastating destruction that it was unleashed in Libya, Yemen, Iraq, and Afghanistan. They struggle not because the truth is difficult to convey to the public, but because the truth is difficult to deny any further. Yep, so more on imperialism, my friends, and this is why I'm gotta get out, 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 out. But remember, the more things change, the more it stays the same. Look, Bush and Obama are buddies. They're all part of that little New World Order network. So, what's that saying? Two separate wings from the same vulture. Talk about the Democrats and Republicans. So, all you folks out there that are diehard partisan fanatics, you better start looking at the bigger picture because you're being bamboozled, or other words, swindled. And we all know about the pipeline thing too, so it has to stop. Let the Syrian people decide choose their own destiny. That's all I gotta say about it. All right, my friends, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the show. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. Plus, that includes my other archives on my Spreaker page. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations that I can be interested in, like other subjects or articles, or you can, but whatever you do, send your correspondence with decorum. You keep me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is all together, LokiLuck with the number 3, at gmail.com. All right, well, I'm going to play a cool little tune. I've used it on my past early episodes. And it's really nice, it's really mellowed, nothing really heavy, anything like that. It's by Kevin MacLeod. It's a song entitled Moorland. Moorland. It is a royalty-free tune, but instrumental, very nice. It had that very Celtic taste to it, I would say. And let's see what it has to say about him. Pretty interesting stuff here. Like it says here, Kevin MacLeod is an American composer and music producer living in New York City. MacLeod is best known for his distribution of royalty-free library music through his website, Incomtech.com. MacLeod has made over 2,000 self-composed pieces of music available for download under Creative Commissions. So it's pretty cool. So check it out. They have a Facebook page too, if I'm correct. So yeah, nice little composition. I enjoy it. So I recommend everyone to, check out the site. You won't be disappointed, okay? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.